Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register protest over the ceasefire violations by the Indian forces along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office said a 3-year-old girl was injured in unprovoked Indian fighting in the Nyal sector. Spokesperson Zahid Hafiz said the Indian troops are continuously targeting civilian population with heavy weaponry. Kashmiris are observing India's Independence Day as Black Day in protest and rejection of its illegal occupation of the valley. The All-Party Hurriyat Conference has called for a complete shutdown across the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In a message, Hurriyat leader Sayyid Ali Gilani said New Delhi has lost its right to celebrate its Independence Day while it deprives Kashmiris of their freedom. The Taliban have accused the Kabul administration of creating obstacles to peace and trying to provoke the world through propaganda. In a statement, the group said Kabul is propagating against its prisoners to halt the start of the intra-Afghan negotiations. Spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid said the Taliban are ready to start the talks under the Doha peace deal. The US and Poland have sealed a defense cooperation deal that paves the way for the redeployment of American troops from Germany to Poland. The agreement was signed with the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Błaszczak in Warsaw. Last month, the US announced to withdraw almost 12,000 troops from Germany, accusing it of not contributing enough to NATO. In the US, more than 1,100 people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, taking the toll to over 168,000 with more than 5.3 million cases. Brazil has reported 1,060 deaths and more than 50,600 infections in a day. In India, nearly 1,000 people have died in the past 24 hours, taking the toll to over 49,000 with more than 2.5 million infected so far. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, COVID-19 death rate continues to decline as 9 people died since yesterday, with 747 new cases. The global number of deaths has crossed 763,000 with over 21 million infected. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register protest over the ceasefire violations along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office said a 3-year-old girl was injured in unprovoked Indian fighting in the Nyal sector. Spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhary said the Indian troops are continuously targeting civilian population with heavy weaponry. Chaudhary said 16 civilians have been martyred and 161 were wounded in 1,980 ceasefire violations so far this year. He said New Delhi's senseless acts of aggression are in clear violation of the 2003 ceasefire understanding. Kashmiris are observing India's Independence Day as Black Day in protest and rejection of its illegal occupation of the valley. All-Party Hurriyat Conference has called for a complete shutdown across Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In a message, Hurriyat leader Sayyid Ali Gilani said New Delhi has lost its right to celebrate Independence Day while it deprives Kashmiris of their freedom. Hurriyat Forum leader Mirwais Umar Farooq said India's illegal abrogation of valley special status is against the UN Charter and the 4th Geneva Convention. Meanwhile, occupation forces converted the valley into a garrison ahead of the Independence Day to prevent people from holding demonstrations. Indian forces set up bunkers to conduct frisking and identification checks while deploying unmanned aerial vehicles to maintain surveillance. Pakistan's Foreign Office says Islamabad is committed to the full realization of Palestinians' legitimate rights. In a statement, the Foreign Office said a deal between the UAE and Israel on the normalization of relations will have far-reaching implications. It said Pakistan's approach towards the matter will be guided by the aspirations of the Palestinians. The Foreign Office said Pakistan has always supported the UN-backed two-state solution to the conflict. It said peace and stability in the Middle East is Islamabad's key priority. Iran said United Arab Emirates has made a huge mistake in reaching a deal to normalize its ties with Israel. In a televised speech, President Hassan Rouhani warned the Gulf state against allowing Tel Aviv to gain a foothold in the region. It said it is a mistake for the Muslim rulers to think that their economy will flourish by attaching themselves to the US. Rouhani warned that the UAE, it will be treated differently. It lets the Zionist regime into the region. Meanwhile, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah says UAE-Israel deal was brokered as a favor to the US President Donald Trump. In a televised speech, Nasrallah said Trump needed something to show ahead of the US presidential elections in November.
In reality, as Trump had wanted to improve the financial situation in the United States over the past few years, and he got this through milking some Gulf Arab regimes financially and took billions of dollars from them. Now, in order to correct his electoral position,
Nasrallah said Hezbollah will make Tel Aviv pay an equal price if Israel was involved in the August 4 explosion in Lebanon. Now moving on, the United Nations Security Council has rejected a US resolution to extend an arms embargo on Iran. Washington fell well short of minimum 9 votes required as 11 members on the 15-member body, including France, Germany and the UK, abstained. In a statement, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said UNSC's failure to act decisively in defense of international peace and security is inexcusable. US envoy to the UN Kelly Croft said Washington has every right to initiate the snapback mechanism and will stop at nothing to extend the embargo. Meanwhile, Iran has hailed UN vote, saying the US has never been so isolated. In a tweet, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said despite all the pressure, Washington could only get the support of one small country. Only the Dominican Republic sided with the US as Russia and China opposed extending the 13-year ban that is due to expire on October the 18th. The Taliban have accused the Kabul administration of creating obstacles to peace and trying to provoke the world through propaganda. In a statement, the group said Kabul is propagating against its prisoners to halt the start of intra-Afghan negotiations. Spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid rejected President Ashraf Ghani's statement against the released Taliban prisoners' involvement in crimes. He said Taliban are ready to start intra-Afghan negotiations under the Doha peace deal. The US and Poland have sealed a defense cooperation deal that paves the way for the redeployment of American troops from Germany to Poland. The agreement was signed by US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Blaszczak in Warsaw. Speaking at the signing ceremony, Poland's President Andrzej Duda said the deal will serve to increase the security of the countries in Europe. He said the agreement will also further other aspects of the US-Polish cooperation, including trade ties. Last month, the US announced to withdraw almost 12,000 troops from Germany, accusing it of not contributing enough to NATO. It is set to move about 5,600 soldiers to other countries in Europe, including Poland. In addition, the US Army 5 Corps overseas headquarters will also relocate to Poland next year. Some 4,500 US troops are currently based in Poland. The US has conducted naval drills in the hotly contested South China Sea led by aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan. In a statement, the US Navy said the strike group conducted flight operations and high-end maritime stability operations. It said Washington is committed to ensuring joint force responsiveness with its allies in order to maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific. China has objected to exercises and said the US rejection of its claims in the sea has undermined stability in the region. The naval exercises come amid heightened tensions between Washington and Beijing over the energy-rich waters, among other issues. Beijing claims 9/10 of the South China Sea, through which some $4 trillion of trade passes a year. In the US, more than 1,100 people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, taking the toll to over 168,000 with more than 5.3 million cases. Brazil has reported 1,060 deaths and more than 50,600 infections in a day. The global number of deaths has crossed 763,000 with over 21 million infections. This report has more.
As the coronavirus consumes hundreds of thousands of lives, infecting millions, the healthcare systems continue to be overwhelmed in Europe, Americas, Australia, and parts of Asia. The U.S. state of California has become the country's first state to breach 600,000 cases threshold. Meanwhile, cases in Latin America have exceeded 6 million as nations continue to relax lockdown measures in the world's worst-hit region. To curb the cross-border spread of the pandemic, a testing site has been set up on the US-Mexico border in San Diego, offering free virus tests to the travelers.
So this is open to everyone. We do not ask for immigration status. Right now there are restrictions on the border in terms of who's able to cross, those that are coming for essential reasons or those that are providing essential services. So anyone coming across is able to come, and anyone that lives in the community can come and get their test.
Over in Europe, France's capital Paris has imposed stricter measures obliging pedestrians to wear masks as the country reported new post-lockdown daily highs. The UK has extended its travel restrictions to France and the Netherlands after an infection spike in these countries. Germany has also imposed antigen PCR tests for arrivals from Spain, apart from the Canary Islands, following a surge in daily cases.
Germany, in conversation with Spain, told us that as they saw the number of infections rise in various regions of Spain, with the exception of the Canary Islands, it would put all the Spanish regions in the zone in which it required that German citizens traveling there take a PCR test on arrival. Obviously, we respect, as we always respect, third countries' decision.
In Australia, the state of Victoria has reported over 300 new cases over the past 24 hours as its COVID-19 curve flattens. While New Zealand is moving fast to contain the second wave and has extended lockdown restrictions after 7 fresh cases were reported overnight. Elsewhere, South Korea has reported its highest number of cases in 5 months with 166 testing positive.
Moreover, in India, 996 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, with the death toll crossing 49,000. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare says over 65,000 tested positive overnight, with the nationwide tally crossing 2.5 million. The ministry said there were currently over 668,000 active cases in the country. Meanwhile, India's Prime Minister Modi claimed the government was testing 3 different vaccines for COVID-19. Modi said his government will begin large-scale production of the vaccines upon approval from the scientists. India is the 3rd worst affected country in the world after the US and Brazil. Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh are the worst hit states in the country, with an accumulative case count topping 240,000. Meanwhile, Pakistan's COVID-19 death rate continues to decline as 9 people died in the past 24 hours. The death toll in the country has risen to 6,162. The Health Ministry says 747 cases were reported overnight as the tally crossed 288,000. The ministry said over 265,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. It said there are over 16,000 active cases in the country, among which 768 are in critical condition. Sindh remains the worst hit province with over 125,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 95,000 cases. In a related development, renowned philanthropist Bill Gates has appreciated Pakistan Army for its support to the government over COVID-19 response and resumption of polio campaign. The Inter-Services Public Relations Head, Chief of Army Staff General Javed Bajwa, and Gates held a telephone conversation. It quoted WWIIS saying the army is working towards the national cause to achieve a polio-free Pakistan. The ISPR said both the sides also discussed the efforts needed to implement the polio campaign during the pandemic. Gates reiterated his foundation's ongoing commitment to support Pakistan in its goals of ending polio and improving health for every child. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The US and France have expressed concern over the increasing tension between Greece and Turkey in the Mediterranean. NATO allies Ankara and Athens are embroiled in a dispute over oil and gas exploration in the disputed waters. White House spokesman said President Donald Trump and President Emmanuel Macron discussed the issue over a phone call. This comes after Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu cautioned France against escalating tensions in the eastern Mediterranean. Speaking at a news conference with his Swiss counterpart in Bern, Çavuşoğlu said Switzerland has offered to mediate and Turkey agrees in principle. He said Greece will get a response if it provokes the Turkish survey vessel in the region. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has urged people to avoid becoming cannon fodder for foreign-backed revolutionaries. This comes as huge crowds took to the streets for a sixth consecutive day to demand Lukashenko to step down. In a televised address, President claimed Belarusians are being used and that several people with criminal past are joining the demonstrations. An opposition politician in exile, Svetlana Tyneskaya, has called for more protests and election recount. The last of three opposition leaders in Belarus has urged the West not to recognize Lukashenko as president. Maria Kuleniskova said a spreading industrial strike means it is just a matter of time until the government crumbles. Tens of thousands of people are joined by workers of state-owned industrial plants. Earlier, in a rare climb down, the government apologized for the use of force as it freed more than 2,000 protesters from a detention. Somalia says it has killed 4 senior Al-Shabaab militants in an operation in the southwestern region of the Lower Shabelle region. Somali Armed Forces said the group's financial coordinator and operations commander was also killed in the operation. The military said the operation was aimed at flushing out terrorists and disrupting their plans to terrorize the residents in the region. It said the army also rescued 33 children in Kurunware, some 20 kilometers from the capital city of Mogadishu. Government said the children were freed when the Somali forces captured it down from the militants. It said the children were kidnapped by the insurgent for ideological indoctrination. 4 people have been injured in an explosion and the ensuing fire in Iran's capital city of Tehran. State media said blaze engulfed the 4-story building near Tehran University, where paper and books were stored. State media said an investigation into the cause of the explosion is underway. This comes amid a series of blasts and fires in recent weeks. Earlier, a fire broke out at an underground nuclear facility, which caused significant damage, but officials said operations were not affected. Mexico's majestic Popocatépetl volcano has rumbled to life, spewing smoke and ash columns some 600 meters out from its crater. The massive plume of gas and ash later dispersed towards the southeast. Mexico's National Center for Disaster Prevention has warned people to stay away from the volcano. It said in the previous 24 hours, the center has observed more than 36 discharges from the volcano. Popocatépetl is 5,426 meters tall and is the second highest mountain in Mexico and the 5th highest in North America. Japan is marking the 75th anniversary of the end of the World War II. Despite the scorching heat and the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands showed up to pay their respect at the historic Yasukuni Shrine for the victims of the war. A scaled-back ceremony was held at the World War II Memorial to mark the anniversary. Speaking on the occasion, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pledged never to repeat the tragedy of war. Abe sent a ritual offering to Tokyo's Yasukuni Shrine for the dead, but avoided a personal visit. The shrine honors senior military and the political figures convicted of war crimes by an international tribunal after the war. Emperor Hironomia Naruhito expressed deep remorse over the country's wartime past that still haunts the East Asian nation. South America's largest marine aquarium is reopening in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro city after 5 months of lockdown. Authorities have put new measures in place to stop the spread of the coronavirus at the tourist attraction. More about the aquarium in this report.
It will be a weekend of sharks, stingrays, and social distancing when Rio de Janeiro's acclaimed aquarium reopens today after 5 months of lockdown. Workers wearing personal protective equipment disinfected Aqua Rio facilities as divers inspected marine tanks in LATAM's largest marine aquarium.
We are sanitizing and disinfecting to protect the area and receive the public this weekend. This product is non-toxic. It has no toxic components. It is a special disinfectant to eliminate microorganisms, including the new COVID-19. It does not represent any risk to any organism.
Rio's aquarium will reopen with limited capacity and will only allow 200 visitors per hour. Face masks, hand sanitizing, and social distancing will be mandatory to prevent coronavirus infections.
We have been preparing for a few weeks. We have been training with the team. Our idea is to reopen cautiously and gradually. We are limiting the number of people coming in. Only 200 people per hour will be allowed into Aquario. In high season, we used to get over 1,000 people per hour.
During the past week, many of Rio de Janeiro's famous tourist attractions have opened up again to visitors. Sugarloaf Mountain and Christ the Redeemer will once again allow tourist visits, even though experts warn Brazil has yet to hit the peak of the pandemic.
And in cricket, the rain has delayed Pakistan's return to continue their first innings on the third day of the second test match against England. The visitors were 223 for 9 at stumps of day 2 at Southampton's Rose Bowl. Wicketkeeper batsman Mohammad Rizwan is still unbeaten with a score of 60 runs. English pacers were quick to utilize the conditions with James Anderson and Stuart Broad, taking 3 wickets each. The hosts lead the 3-match series 1-0. German champions Bayern Munich crushed Barcelona with a thumping 8-2 win at the Estadio da Luz to reach the semi-finals of the Champions League. Records tumbled as Barca suffered its first defeat by a 6-goal margin since 1951, while the Catalans conceded 8 goals for the first time since 1946. Bayern were 4-1 inside 31 astonishing minutes with a mercurial Thomas Muller brace and goals from Ivan Perisic, Serge Gnabry. Philip Coutinho also hit a brace to rub salt in the wounds as the Spaniards fell apart to surely spell the end of an era for the Catalan Giants. Munich Giants face either Manchester City or Lyon in the semi-finals. Uganda's Joshua Cheptegei has broken a 16-year-old 5,000 meters world record by almost 2 seconds at the Monaco Diamond League. Cheptegei broke Ethiopian long-distance runner Kenenisa Bekele's record set in the Netherlands in 2004. In the presence of 5,000 spectators in the stadium, the Ugandan clocked 12 minutes, 35 points in 36 seconds. Earlier, Cheptegei said he would try to beat Bekele's record run of 12 minutes, 37 points and 35 seconds in the first Diamond League meeting of the season. The former 10,000 meters world champion was in hot form before the lockdown as he set world records over 10 kilometers and 5 kilometers on the road. Meanwhile, in the women's 5,000 race, Kenya's world champion Helen Obiri won the contest in 14 minutes, 18.37 seconds. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.